HB 164, Rep. Boyd. She's en route. So we'll go at ease for a moment until Rep. Boyd gets here. Thank you. And members, just so you know, when we're at ease, the cameras are still rolling. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to go back on record. If we can have a quorum, please. All right, back on the record, HB 164 by Representative Boyd. Members, it's 12:19. We have to be on the floor for 1 o'clock. I am just asking you to recognize that, or we'll come back tonight and finish the bill. Mr. Gonzalez, let's see, where's Representative Boyd? Representative Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Let's wait till Representative Boyd gets in, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Gonzalez, you want to read the instrument to the record, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Members, this is House Bill 164 by Representative Boyd. Provides for exceptions to the abortion laws of the state relative to rape and incest.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Representative Boyd on your bill.
Thank you for waiting for me patiently today. I brought the bill before this committee last week, who had some concerns on the language and identifying the actual penalty and what offenses, so we've had some amendments drawn up since then.
Mr. Gonzalez on the amendments.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Members, this is Amendment Set 3996. Amendments 2 through 5 are technical, and the substantive amendments, the First Amendment, which does the following. It provides that abortion is not the termination of a pregnancy that is the result of an act that constitutes any of the following offenses when the victim is under 17 years of age. And those offenses are as follows: rape, first-degree rape, second-degree rape, third-degree rape, molestation of a juvenile or a person with a physical or mental disability, crime against nature, which is formally referred to as incest, and aggravated crime against nature. And that's what these amendments do.
Rep. Walters, did you have questions on the amendment or the bill? Okay, thank you. Rep. Boyd on your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we thought about what was said in committee last week. I actually shared some conversation with Rep. Moore, who's not here today, and we also decided to put an age max on this bill, which is now under the age of majority, under 17 years of age. And the crime would be for first-degree rape, well, he just read what the crimes would be. So I asked for the adoption of these amendments.
We have a motion by Vice Chair LaFleur offering the amendments to be adopted. Do we have any objections? Hearing none, let the amendment be adopted. Rep. Boyd on your bill.
So I think we all know now that this is near and dear to me for a variety of reasons. I have not kept it a secret that my concern really has always been the children. You have girls who are young as 9, which means they're ovulating at 8, that are having their cycles. We've had cases here in Louisiana in bounding states with children under 13 being raped and then subjected to carrying a child to term for a variety of reasons. So I hope that we take a look at the fact that this is to protect our most vulnerable, our children. Someone sent me an email last week regarding this bill and said to me in the bill, so I guess you wish you had been aborted. 1, it's sick, but 2, I didn't have the option. My mother didn't have the option in the 60s. But my response would have been, had it been somebody of reason, someone with some common sense, is that my story is my mother sacrificed her life for a life because she didn't have an option. No one took care of that kid, that 15-year-old was not taken care of, that she would then start to self-medicate and subsequently was gone before she was 30 years old. I'm looking to find a way to let the families decide what's best for their family of these children. and I ask for your favorable passage.
Thank you, Rep. Boyd. Rep. Walters.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rep. Boyd, for bringing this bill back. And I want to state that a lot of times for many women, and especially our girls, incest and rape is beyond their control. It's beyond their control, and so I definitely want to say that. And in terms of incest, I want to say and make clear that, let's say hypothetically, let's say an uncle has a child for a niece. Not only is he the father of that child, he is also the great uncle of that child. If it's a case of first cousins, not only is the gentleman a father of that child, he is also a first cousin once removed. Some people say second cousin, either way, of that child. And so I just want to make sure that, you know, we understand the incest portion of this bill. And again, a lot of times rape, which I'm a victim of, and incest are beyond a woman's control. And at the appropriate time, I would like to move this favorable. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Walters. Rep. Knox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In advance, I apologize because, again, this is something that really triggers me. So I'm going to apologize in advance. But I'm not apologizing to these monsters who rape these little innocent girls. I'm not apologizing for these so-called men who should be thrown in prison and have their deaths due. It sickens me that we can be in a society where men rape little girls. I'm trying my best not to get graphic about the rape, but there's a lot that goes on in the rape that is traumatic alone. And then when you add on top of that a pregnancy, and you let these evil devils have the satisfaction of impregnating a 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old child, they have the satisfaction of knowing that on top of her trauma. It's disgusting. It's disgusting to me that we have a society where we can't make exceptions in a situation where a young girl's innocence has been taken away in the most vile way, in the most disgusting way. And every time this bill comes up and every time this conversation comes up, it triggers me. Every time. Because I think about what that little innocent girl is going through. That monster that's on top of her, taking her innocence away. And now she's impregnated. And somebody somewhere want to force a 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old child to have a baby for the monster, that evil devil that took her innocence away. And we don't want to talk about it, but I want to talk about it since we got it here today. And I hope you bring this bill every year. And whenever you get tired of bringing it, Representative Boyd, let me know so I can bring it. Because we don't want to talk about the disgust of some of these so-called men in our society who are raping these little girls, unbeknownst to their mother, unbeknownst to their father. We don't want to talk about that. We don't want to talk about the trauma that they have to live with. I suffer from PTSD. Combat related. I haven't slept more than 4 hours in 25 years. I can't imagine that kind of PTSD for a 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, or even a grown woman for that matter, each and every day. The vasectomy bill doesn't do enough. The castration bill doesn't do enough for these so-called men, these devils, these monsters, these awful bastards that we just throw in prison. We don't do enough to punish those kind of people, in my estimation. And there's not enough prison justice to take care of it. So if this bill is going to give some trauma relief, I'm for it.
Thank you, Rep. Knox. And as always, thank you for your service.
If I
Vice
can
Chair.
respond to that for a second, please, Madam Chair.
Perhaps with the next member's question, we just don't deviate from the rules. Rep. Boyd, I'd
Okay.
like to allow you to, but it's not fair to anyone else.
Okay.
Vice Chair LaFleur.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me say, I appreciate you bringing this and being the standard bearer for this. You have done an excellent job tailoring this bill, being specific about the crimes, being specific that is for children, little girls who are raped, little girls whose family member takes it upon themselves to rob them of their innocence. I thank you for this bill. I thank you for trying to work it out. And it's a bill about children. It's a bill about making sure our children who go through this trauma get help, one. Two, don't have to suffer from it for the rest of their lives. I appreciate you doing this. And I wish we were at a place where we could have grown folk conversations about this and make grown folk decisions about how we treat our children in instances like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair LaFleur. Rep. Boyd, did you want to
Yes.
add some comment?
So I want to add to the trauma that Rep. Knox is talking about, the trauma of carrying a child for an adult. I was married 23 and I only have one kid because of the trauma that it brought to my adult body. Visualize a baby having a baby. Gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, all the things that that little body, that little frame will have to endure from this. I have one child because the trauma to my body at 23 was a lot. I want y'all all to think about that.
Thank you, Rep. Boyd. Rep. Horton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know I love you, and I'm grateful that you're here. You know, I have daughters, I have granddaughters. I would like to implement the death penalty for the men, but can't kill the innocent child. It's unthinkable. I know no more horror, but at the same time, we either believe God formed the baby, then when we don't. He doesn't condone evil. I want to put to death the perpetrator, not the innocent. And that baby is innocent as that poor child who's, I mean, there is no good thing to say except we have to hold on to that. I think we should punish the perpetrator to the nth degree. I'd love to hang him from the highest tree if it was in my power to do so. But I cannot condone killing the innocent. But thank you, Madam Chair.
So
Thank you, Rep.
Rep.
Horton.
Morrison, and I think she had a conversation with you too about the exception for the children. Yeah. Because she figured someone was going to, and she has a death in the family. I'm not sure if everyone knew about her situation.
No, her husband's okay.
I'll ask you, Rep. Horton, when you have time to please read Exodus chapter 21, verse 22 through 25, where the exception that was made was because of the wife's infidelity. And the option for that also was the death of that child, that in the uterus. This is from Rep. Moore, who you guys know is a stark pro-lifer. But she wanted to send this to me because her weekend she spent researching
Sure.
different scriptures, and I'll forward them to you as well.
Because we do know that God says, I formed you in the womb. I knew your inward parts before they were fit together.
But he also made exceptions to
Well,
that.
I don't see that.
Well, that's why I'm giving you the verses.
I just know that child is different. Child is innocent, and I'm either pro-life or I'm not. I can't have any in between, and that's
I agree
that's
with
me.
that. Yeah.
That's me.
I do.
And thank you for sharing
The
that.
pro-life should be also from the womb to the tomb.
Well,
Not just so they get
I'm
here.
talking about the innocent.
Pro-life should be from the womb to the tomb, because the innocent 9-year-old, the 10-year-old, she's innocent as well.
Absolutely was. No doubt. No argument.
Thank you, Rep. Horton. Rep. Ventrella.
Rep Boyd, I too want to echo the sentiments of my friend Rep Horton. I appreciate you, and I thank you so much for being here. It's a hard one because when you're faced with the emotional situation and the circumstances that can happen, it's very difficult to look that in the face. But I too, like Rep Horton, do believe, if we're pro-life, we're pro-life, and don't punish the life of the innocent, for the sins, how it may have occurred. And my question to you, and I know that I have had a multitude of emails out of my district, people asking me out of my district, begging me to be against this legislation. One of their primary concerns is that the enforceability of this. Are you concerned in any way, or can you address that, how we make sure, we're not requiring a police report, and nor should we ever require anybody to violate their own privacy and put their business out there in any mandatory way, but are you concerned, how would this be enforced? How can we know?
How can you know what?
If
If
the
a
person
9-year-old was raped?
Well, so
You
any
think the
of them.
9-year-old asked for it?
That's not my question directly. This isn't just for children.
It is. The amendments now are under 17.
Okay, so you change it to 17. Well, but still, even then, 17 years old. How can you know? If
The physician would know if someone was raped. That child would know if someone raped her.
the concern still, though, again, is the innocence of the baby and the enforceability of it.
The enforceability of what?
Again, what I stated.
What are you stating? It's not clear.
If 17-year-olds are coming in and they had an incident with their boyfriend or what have you, and they're coming in and they're saying that is a concern directly from my district about this, the enforceability. How do we say, oh, yes, we know, bar none, that this is what happened? That is a major concern.
There are several ways for that to be identified,
Okay.
even without a police report. Physicians, counseling services, rape crisis services. So there are several ways, but to be clear, if my mother was 15, her sperm donor was 28. Any way you look at that, that's statutory rape. Any way you look at it.
And I am in no way, and I don't want to relive anybody's trauma or open up any of the doors. I'm just telling you, as a representative of my district, I have to say it is valid concerns. It's not always a statutory rape circumstance when a 17-year-old comes in. There's not any way to 100% verify that. So for the cost-benefit analysis to harm an innocent life
Thank you,
in
Reverend
exchange for that is not
Thank you,
worth the
Reverend
harm.
Jella.
Thank you.
I do not see any more questions on the board by members. We have 42 green cards in support, not wishing to speak. We have many green cards. Let's see, we have green cards in support, wishing to speak. We have Dr. Nalima. Is Dr. Nalima still present? Suzanne Welsh and Jesse Manley, if y'all want to come to the table, please.
Good
Who's going
afternoon.
first? And you are Suzanne Welsh.
I am Suzanne Welsh.
Okay.
I am a board certified OBGYN. I trained at the Medical College of Wisconsin and subsequently did residency at the University of Utah. Thank you for allowing me to speak with all of you today. My practice over the last 30 years in women's health care has included private practice, group practice, as well as academic practice. I continue to train medical students, residents, as well as PA students, nursing students, and nurse practitioner students. My years of practice have followed protocols, evidence-based medicine, best practices, what we consider standard of cares, personalized medicine, and most recently and most importantly, trauma-based care. Trauma-based care includes safety, choice, collaboration with the patient, trustworthiness, and very importantly, empowerment to the patient. This we know has led to better health outcomes. Support for HB 164 would allow for the smallest return to the principles of medical practice that myself and many of us have strove to give in women of this state and the other states I've practiced in. Practice of healthcare in Louisiana has been very challenging. The landscape will continue to narrow and detract from the best physicians who would like to train and continue to practice here. I fear centers of excellence for women's healthcare will be unable to establish here in the state. That makes me very sad for you. Please consider supporting this. I really do appreciate the opportunity to be involved in this conversation with you all.
Rep. Knox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You said something about trauma-centered. Thank you for being here and giving this testimony. And I want to take this opportunity, Madam Chair, and I'm going to use up my time, to say I have the most respect for our colleagues and where they may stand on this issue. I appreciate it's a difficult subject, and I'm on the record in saying that I've been evolving over the years on this. But I'm reminded of a conversation I had someone last year when representing the board brought this bill. And at that time, there was a lot of conversation about rapists from Mexico. And the sidebar conversation that I had with a gentleman was, if your 9, 10-year-old or 11, 12-year-old get raped by some big man from Mexico, what will your response be? As of today, I have not gotten a response. So that says something to me. And again, I get it. This is a difficult issue. And I continue to evolve on it. But when it comes to children, you can parse and nuance it as it relates to a 17-year-old. But I submit, if you got a 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old that's pregnant with a rapist from Mexico, and they have to see that baby every day, that's relived trauma, in my opinion. Can you speak to that?
Well, I think the health care that we try to deliver to women in this state and anywhere that I practiced, and really what has come to be considered best practices and standard of care, takes into account the trauma that every patient comes from. And in an annual exam for women, that really may also take place. We have to involve every individual's trauma in how we take care of every individual patient. And so I think
does the trauma ever go away?
No.
Thank you.
In my world, no.
In my world and in my life, it doesn't either, because I'm still dealing with it 25 years later, as you can see. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Rep. Knox. Rep. Walters.
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Welch, you're an OBGYN?
I am.
Okay. If I bring my niece, who is 11-year-old, she's 11 years old now, but when she started having cycles, she was 7. If I bring her to you, would you have a way to assess that she had been raped? If we say that was the case?
I think on physical exam, there are telltale signs. The absence of signs may not preclude that as well, though.
What are some of the telltale signs?
I think structurally, disruption of a hymen without prior tampon usage could be a sign of some type of vaginal penetration. Other signs could be diagnosed sexually transmitted diseases that are otherwise unaccounted for by any other type of history.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Walters. I don't see any more questions for Dr. Welsh. If we could have Audrey Westcombe. Thank you, Dr. Welsh. Audrey Westcombe, come on up and take Dr. Welsh's seat. In the interest of time, Dr. Nalima.
So again, my name is Dr. Nilima Sukhavasi, and again, I'm a board-certified OBGYN physician working in Baton Rouge. Just to prove that I am a full-time working OBGYN. I was on call last night. These are important issues that affect my day-to-day practice, and I chose to be here today, taking time off, paid time off from work, hours I could have been spending with my family on vacation at a later time. These are important issues that affect the care that we can offer our patients in this state, okay? This past year alone, my colleagues and I have delivered multiple teenagers, many as young as 13 years old, who had become pregnant due to rape under our current laws. Some of these teenagers suffered from complications related to their pregnancies, such as preeclampsia and eclampsia, where teenagers have an increased risk of developing seizures related to high blood pressure that can lead to death, placental abruption, where the abruption shears off the side of the uterus, and cause pregnancy-related issues. Severe tears and lacerations, which can lead to postpartum hemorrhage. Both of those, preeclampsia and postpartum hemorrhage, are leading causes of maternal morbidity and mortality in our state. One of these teenagers delivered a baby while clutching a teddy bear. And that's an image I feel like once you see that, you can't unsee. With our state's laws, these young girls were forced into becoming pregnant through the trauma of sexual assault, forced to accept the risk of continuing the pregnancy, forced to then accept the risk and complications of childbirth and the subsequent trauma that they may have from their sexual assaults. I wholeheartedly will admit that some survivors of sexual assault choose to continue their pregnancies and have healthy, positive relationships with themselves and their children. Adoption is also an option for them that some of them choose. But I believe that this is a very personal decision that should be left up to the individual themselves. As a physician, I trust that with appropriate individualized counseling, my patients, even children and teenagers, are able to make decisions regarding their bodies that are most appropriate to them and their families. This includes making decisions regarding abortion care. There's overwhelming public support for this bill, and I urge you to listen to us as physicians and your constituents and support it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Knox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Doctor, again for being here. You've been here since last year doing a good fight, and I appreciate it. You mentioned that there was an incident where a young girl clutching a baby doll giving birth to a baby.
Yes.
Are you aware in any scenario where a 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old child is just making up a rape?
No.
In my appreciation, most of them can't even articulate it. Is that your understanding?
That's correct.
In my understanding, most of these monsters, these so-called men, they threaten a young child to say, if you tell anyone, I'm going to kill you or I'm going to kill your parents. Is that your understanding?
I have heard of situations similar to that, yes.
Thank you. Also, these 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old girls, how many of them report a rape?
I don't know the percentages of that, but I will just say anecdotally, based on my experience, a lot of them do not want to report it due to fear related to family members, people that they know, where they could face serious repercussions if they were to report that.
And the rapist just gets away with it, pretty much, in the fact that he's leaving his evidence with the young girl. Is that correct?
I can't necessarily answer what happens to that person.
If they're pregnant, the evidence, in my opinion, would be a baby. Would you agree?
Yes.
And I said earlier that last year when this came before us, I asked someone on the side if your daughter, your 9, your 10, your 12-year-old child gets raped by a monster from Mexico. No one wants to answer that question. They just stare and look at me. Do you know why?
I can theorize why, but I prefer not to comment on that.
Thank you.
Rep. Wal-
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Doctor, for being here the entire day. Question: do you have a practice where you assess, like, if someone comes and says, you know, I've been raped, do you have an assessment for that?
So typically what happens is victims of sexual assault would come to an emergency room setting typically, and they would be assessed by what we call SANE nurses or specially trained nurses who would potentially collect evidence, check for sexually transmitted infections, etc. So I will be honest, I don't typically do that screening myself in the clinic setting, but if I had a patient come to me at an appointment telling me that she was assaulted, I would believe my patient.
Okay, thank you.
Rep. Walters, Dr. Lima, I don't see any further questions for you. Ms. Harris, Julie Schwem Harris, are you present and want to come to the table? Jesse Manley.
Good afternoon. My name's Jesse Manley. I'm a resident of New Orleans. In February of 2013, my wife was coming home from work on a rainy day. She opened her car door, opened her umbrella, and she was staring down the barrel of a gun. She was kidnapped by 3 teenagers, 15, 16, and 18, put in the back of a car, and robbed and gang raped for over an hour. When they were done, they just pushed her out on the side of the road. Fortunately, she did not get pregnant during her rape. And I say fortunately because in the aftermath, we could barely keep ourselves alive. I don't think I'm being hyperbolic when I say that if she had been forced to carry a pregnancy to term, she wouldn't have survived. She would not still be with us today. I lost my job. It was just no environment to bring a child into the home. I had a really nice career working for a billion-dollar company, multinational company. I was managing a 10-state region with over 100 employees. I needed to take time off to go to the trial where one of her rapists was going to be pleading guilty. They didn't want to give me the time off, and they fired me. I went anyway, and they fired me. I was out of work for over a year. That was 8 months after her rape. So the next month, if she had been pregnant, we would have had a baby on the way. 10 years later, we're still dealing with the PTSD. She still has panic attacks sometimes when she has to leave the house at night or driving in the rain. Even something as simple as going to work in the morning is a challenge because when she has to leave the house to go to work, it means she has to turn around and come home at some point. And that's when they took her. This bill, I think, is a common sense piece of legislation. It's compassionate, like don't force rape survivors to carry the pregnancy of their rapist. I know we pay a lot of lip service to sparing rape survivors and crime survivors in general of further trauma. That's kind of nebulous, though. Like, what does that actually mean? I want to give you a really specific example in my wife's case, and I'm going to ask you to think about it when you vote on this bill. If she had been pregnant as a result of a rape and had been forced by the state of Louisiana to carry that pregnancy to term, she not only would have had to spend 9 months knowing that the baby growing inside of her was put there by her rapist, she would have had to spend 9 months wondering which of her rapists was the father. Was it the one who put a gun to her head? Was it the one who told her that she was going to die and her family would never find her body? Or was it the one who pushed her out of a moving vehicle? You don't have the power to stop the rape from happening, but you have the power to spare someone that nightmare of carrying the rapist baby. And I'm asking you to vote for this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Manley, and thank you for your testimony, Rep. Knox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sir, I so appreciate you being here, sharing that personal story. Please give my condolences to your wife and to you. As a man, I can only imagine how difficult this is for you to sit there and talk about this. And I'm so grateful that you're here. I see your trauma and I feel your trauma. And what my concern is, we don't ever want to have the real conversation about this issue. It's in a vacuum. It's abstract because people like you know what the real deal is. People like you know and feel trauma. People like your wife know and feels the trauma of it every day. 10 years later, it doesn't even change. It's just like it happened today. I'm not going to even say yesterday, just like it happened today. And that's what I want everyone in here and in the listening audience to hear and feel your pain as a man. Imagine you being a father of a 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old child that's been raped. Imagine that. And as a man, you can't be there to protect your child. And as a husband, I know you feel some kind of way that you couldn't be there to protect your wife. Let's have the real conversation about this issue and come to some common sense legislation to address it. Because what's going to continue to happen, young girls are going to continue to be raped. And they're going to continue to be forced in a trauma for a lifetime because they can't get rid of their rapist baby. That's the reality. Hard conversation. I respect my colleague, all of them who are on this issue. I have the most respect for them. I can't disagree more because I know the trauma that you're feeling. And until people feel that trauma, they can't appreciate it like you and I. And I thank you for being here so they can have some semblance of what it looks like. But they will never know what it feels like every single day and every single night. When your wife has to go out to the car, she's looking over her shoulder. You as a man, you're worried about where she's located when you don't hear from her at a certain time. Until everybody has that appreciation, until everybody can feel your pain and trauma like I'm feeling right now, this matter will never be resolved. But I want to keep the conversation going, and I appreciate you and your wife being strong enough and courageous enough to share this story.
Thank you, Mr. Manley. I don't see any more members having questions. Mr. Manley, if you would kindly trade places, Sadie Summerlin, if you want to come on up. And we have Audrey Wascombe.
Wascombe, yes.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
My name is Audrey Wascombe, and I'm a resident of Baton Rouge. Last year, I testified in front of this committee about my 25 years of professional experience in the field of violence against women, including 2 cases of 8-year-olds who became pregnant as a result of rape. I also testified about my personal experiences as a child, about how my grandfather raped me, and how, together with my grandmother, trafficked me and produced child pornography of those acts. My bladder doesn't work the way it's supposed to because of the scar tissue and the damage. On average, I spend approximately $1,000 a month just to keep my body working. This has been almost 40 years. Because of what those monsters did to me, I have visible scars both internally and externally on my vaginal area. A month after I testified last year, just from walking down the street, 2 of those scars broke down, ripping me in 2 like an episiotomy scar. 3 months later, another one broke down. And in January of this year, the breakdown of some of the scar tissue was bad enough that I was unable to leave my house for almost 3 weeks. During those 3 weeks, I couldn't even sit, but had to lay on my side for almost 21 days for those scars to heal. Since I testified last year in front of this committee, I've lost 7 weeks of my life because of what those monsters did to me almost 40 years ago. I can't even fathom the idea of what it would have done to my body to have been forced to carry a pregnancy to term after being raped as a child. 7 weeks gave me a lot of time to think about things, and what I found myself reflecting on the most was this: that members of this body, elected to represent me, voted against this bill last year and very clearly told me that those monsters matter more than I do. If you choose to vote no to this bill, the only people you're protecting are traffickers, rapists, and abusers. I also see I have some time, and I would like to also offer that I can answer questions about data, about some of the questions that have been asked to the physicians about how you can tell from my professional experience.
Rep Knox for a question.
I was going to first say thank you for being here. And I remember you from being here last year. And you're speaking to something that, again, we don't really want to talk about. The graphic side of it. We want to talk about a grown man on top of a 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old child and the actual act of the penetration, whether it's in the vagina or somewhere else. We don't want to talk about that. We don't want to talk about those scars because it's too ugly and it's too vile. We don't want to talk about the life impact as you just described. We don't want to talk about that. We want to brush it away. I thank you for being here and putting it in our face. I appreciate your courage for being here. If you could speak to the data, please do.
I really want to just, there was a couple of things about how you could tell. They have, as the physicians have spoken about, sane nurses, but also anyone under the age of 17 cannot legally consent to sexual activity. It is a crime in our state. And I also want to talk about, by the time someone, the cases that I've spoken about in the past in front of this committee, they were, both of those children were well into their second trimester. At that age, they usually don't even know that they are pregnant. The damage, as I have clearly stated today, is visible. There are forensic obstetricians, gynecologists that, because the damage to a body could be so much worse during an exam, if they go to the hospital, they can do further damage to the structure. They have to wait for an additional appointment so that, another physician can look to say yes or no. But I will tell you that no one can legally give consent if they're a minor.
How does this affect your relationship with men?
I'm sorry?
How does the rape over the years affect your relationship with men?
I will say that I just celebrated my 20th wedding anniversary with a phenomenal man. I will tell you, until we met, I had no interest in getting married, and that I had to, my parents went into major debt to get me help for, dealing with that kind of trauma. And then the medical aspect. My husband has never tried to fix me. He's only my partner and supportive. It does help that he is also a physician. So he's very clinical about a lot of things.
Thank you, Ms. Westcomb. Representative Walters.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, ma'am, for being here today and sharing your testimony. And I am sorry that you had the type of grandparents that would expose you to the world. But nonetheless, you persevered and you're here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Walters. Rep. LaFleur.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Audrey, I once again thank you for sharing your story. Full disclosure, Audrey's one of my closest friends on this earth. And your story has always informed me, and allowed me to have real raw conversations with you about your life and how it impacted you. And I'm happy that you have the strength now to share it with others because it is helping someone. And I thank you for that.
And I just want to say thank you for being one of the safe, probably 5 people on this planet that knew stuff until last year.
Thank you, Vice Chair LaFleur, and thank you, Ms. Westcomb, for your bravery and testimony. I don't see any more questions on the board for you. If we could have you trade places, and Frankie Robertson, if you want to come to the table. And members, it is 1:03. We're supposed to be on the floor. We will go as long as we can until the speaker says we need to be on the floor. And so I just want to let you know that Frankie Robertson is not here. Kohanda Corley, if you want to take a seat and Ms. Harris and Sadie Summerlin don't remember which one was first. If you do, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Julie Schwamm Harris. For those of you who weren't here when I spoke earlier for the bill that Rep. Newell had, I'm from New Orleans, and the reason I wanted to testify, we are invited as citizens to come and testify to the legislature on things that we care deeply about. And I've cared deeply about this issue for many years, but 34 years ago in 1990, I came to the legislature to advocate. There was a bill that was passed that didn't protect victims of rape and incest, and it was vetoed by Governor Romer. And I was one of the citizens that was helping to advocate for that veto not to be overridden, because it is very important for citizens of rape and incest to not have to be re-traumatized by state actions that prevent them from getting access to an abortion if that is what their desire is, to help deal with the trauma. In the case of the representatives and those of you who have these torn religious or other compelling reasons to talk about the life of that is growing in this rape victim, the damage done to young people particularly, and we're talking about a bill that right now is dealing with people under 17, the damage done to young bodies is preventing life for her for the future. The damage that is done by a pregnancy by a rapist could potentially prevent that young person from giving the gift of life with a loved one, with a husband or a partner who understands the trauma that she's been through and can work with her through that to actually give life. So there are very difficult things, whether they're dealt with in the Bible about some of the difficult choices that have to be made in trying to balance justice and injustice with people's lives. I would say that you would do well to err on the side of supporting justice for these victims of violence and allowing them to make a choice that they then can give the gift of life in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Rep. Knox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ma'am, thank you for being here as always. I really appreciate you and your testimony. Like you, this is personal for me in so many ways. And the Marine in me is very protective. And I'm very protective of the most vulnerable in our population. Can you speak to how many states has an exception to abortion?
I don't know that figure. I know some of them might, but I don't have that figure. I'm sure someone in this room does, and we can get them to submit a white card just to get you that number.
I would like that. Are you aware of what polls are in terms of where Louisiana stands? The last poll I saw was about 70% of Louisianians are in support of an exception. Are you aware of that?
I'm aware that most people do believe that you should not be forced to carry the product of a rape.
And are you aware that I have so much respect for my colleagues and their stance on this pro-life issue? I know them to be good and decent people, but on this issue, we couldn't be farther apart. And I pray and I beg every time this issue comes up that they will see the pain of an innocence taken away. Do you agree?
I've been here 34 years, not every year, but I come regularly to support this issue and others that allow people to thrive in a very imperfect world that we live in.
Is it your belief that evil is all around us?
I don't know if I'm an optimist or a pessimist. I heard a radio story this morning where a radio announcer talked about what he believed is people believe in their own self-interest. But if that self-interest can be enlarged to include the interests of others, to preserve, in a sense, their self-interest. So that's not about good and evil. We also hurt people. Our society does things that damages people. So when we talk about crime and punishment, that's a whole other issue. On this issue, I think particularly the bill that the Representative Boyd has brought is trying to get the legislators to focus on this victim, this survivor of violence that has to go forth, live, perhaps to love, to have children one day of her own. And so when you're trying to balance it, I don't focus on the good and evil. I'm focusing on the balance that is needed by a government to handle those competing interests.
Thank you, ma'am. I see no more questions by members. I appreciate your testimony. Sadie Summerlin.
My name is Sadie Summerlin. I am now 40. When I was 17, I was raped. It was the first night I moved to college. I had just graduated from high school, just moved into college dorm, and was raped that night. The only thing I could think to do, the only thing I desperately wanted to do was wash the disgusting feeling off and out of me. And I tried. I did the worst thing a rape victim can do. I showered. I took the hottest shower I can stand. My skin burned from the heat, and more so with the desperate scrubbing to wash this away. I was 17, but by the time I could bring myself to say the words to tell somebody what had happened and that I felt so lost, alone, and scared, about 38 hours had passed. By the time I went to the hospital and completed the rape kit, of which I still have PTSD and struggle with a yearly exam, and all that is involved when you walk in as a rape victim, more than 48 hours had passed. I had less than 24 hours to be able to take emergency contraceptive because thank God it was available for me then. Because had it not been, I would have had an abortion. I would have needed an abortion. And I would not have thought of it as potentially ending a life. I would have been saving one. I would have been saving my life. I now have the honor of being the mother of an incredibly smart, strong, brave, kind, beautiful, and precious little person that brings unimaginable joy to my life. And I truly don't have the words to express how much she means to me. The only reason why that incredibly precious life is here today is because I had the choice for my life. So I am begging you on behalf of all survivors that you give them a chance to survive. You think about them. Rape is a crime of control. As a rape survivor, it is very difficult to see the difference between a rapist and the state of Louisiana currently with these laws.
Thank you, ma'am. Knox. Representative Knox.
Not on. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, ma'am, for being here and sharing your story. You are a survivor. You are the example and epitome of a survivor. And I'm so thankful to God that you are here today. And I'm so thankful that you have the joy of your child in your life today. I'm so in awe of your strength and your beauty and your courage to come before this committee and look us in the face and look us in the eyes to share your pain and your vulnerability. I'm so thankful to God for you. You just don't know.
Thank you.
And I wish that all my colleagues who are here and on the floor can hear you and look you in the eyes like I'm looking you right now, and seeing the pain and seeing the joy and seeing the trauma all mixed up in once. I'm so thankful to God for you being here today and sharing your story. And like you, I allow myself to be vulnerable. Like you, I let my PTSD and trauma show. I put it on full display. This is the calm version. I'm so thankful for you. Yes, people who don't suffer with it don't understand it like you and I do.
Rep.
But
Knox, I understand you need to take it down. Thank you.
That's noted, Madam Chair. My PTSD is triggered. But I'm so thankful for this woman to be here today because she is calming my PTSD with her courage. And I hope, like you, I will beg my members to come to the common sense.
Please do.
I'm begging them now.
Thank you.
I'm begging them now. I'm making myself vulnerable to them now.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Summerlin. We have a question by Representative Walters.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Summerlin, thank you for being here today and sharing your testimony in transparency. And like yourself, I too took a hot shower, a very hot shower. It is nothing like washing the painful memories away. And so thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Walters, and thank you, Ms. Summerlin, for your bravery.
Thank you.
Ma'am, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Karonda Corley. I am a proud parent and disabilities advocate nationally. Right now, Louisiana ranks number 19 in rape cases throughout the country. Let me say that again. We're ranked at number 19. The distinguished gentleman asked for exceptions. 27 states have abortion bans based on gestational duration. 7 states ban abortion at or before 18 weeks gestation. 20 states ban abortion at some point after 18 weeks. And 9 states and the District of Columbia do not restrict abortion based on gestational duration. I would like to make sure that we note that we like to copy things from Mississippi, and Mississippi is one of those states with an exception. People with disabilities, 90% of the people with developmental disabilities will experience some type of sexual assault, 7 times than those for people without disabilities. Let me speak that statistic one more time for you. 90%. 90. We asked for the State Department of Education to provide us with the data as it relates to those with disabilities that were sexually assaulted and raped in Louisiana School for Deaf and Blind, and we do not have it yet. But we definitely know that the report was made more than once. In fact, the newspaper article was floating around more than once. We also know that there is a mother that gave birth to a child with, from her rapist that actually had to share custody and see her rapist every single day. I'm sorry, I think that might have been in your district, Representative Villio.
Ma'am,
I'm not
I
sure.
need you to, if you could take the volume down just a little.
Yes, ma'am. My PTSD is triggered too because just like Representative Knox stated, I suffer from PTSD because my child, who's a male, was sexually assaulted at the age of 3 and 4. And had he gotten a woman or a female student in his disability class pregnant, who would have been faced to take care of that child had it been birth? Who? Would it have been me? Or would it have been the mother of the young girl? Or would it have been the grown adult woman that was sexually assaulting and abusing him as well? See, we don't talk about what the trauma looks like, and we doggone sure don't talk about what the examination looked like. So let me paint it because it don't look like what it say it does on Law and Order SVU. What it looked like is you go up under an alias name into the hospital, and then you have photos taken of your body, whether it is genital tearing or anal ripping. They take pictures, they swab it, and then you have to take a ton of medication, hoping and praying that you don't get pregnant or get an STD. So when we talk about what it looked like, we have to talk about that mental health resources don't exist, and health and education keep getting cut by this state.
Thank you, ma'am.
So if we're gonna address it,
Ma'am,
we
your
have to
time is
address
up.
it. But
Ma'am.
I welcome everyone for all questions. Representative Villio, all of them.
Representative Knox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ma'am, thank you for being here and being so vulnerable. You bring a whole nother aspect to this. as it relates to disability. You bring a whole nother nuance to this thing. When we're talking about deaf children, when we're talking about blind children, when we're talking about children 9, 10, 11, 12, girls who has autism, it's a new nuance. And so a blind child, a deaf child, an autistic child who is raped by a caretaker, a family member, they now have to have a whole nother level of trauma. And the sickening thing about that is a lot of those kids can't articulate the rape and abuse and the trauma that they're going through. Am I right about that?
You are absolutely correct, Representative Knox. In fact, a lot of the parents, such as myself being an advocate, we have come to this Capitol more times than I can count, speaking about the sexual assault and abuse. That is what led to the cameras in the self-contained classrooms, because so many of our children were being raped and they could not verbally tell us. They instead manifested a behavior. And when I say a behavior, my son to this day, he pinches me under his armpit because his rapist still works in the school system, and he had to see her until we could actually go in court. These are problems that nobody wants to talk about, especially this elected body. Why? We don't have the mental health and behavioral health supports that we need to address the trauma that is inflicted. If I'm going to continue on statistics, it even says that more than 50% of the children that are deaf will be raped. And that's why I stated that Louisiana Department of Education has failed us by not providing that information, because that was part of the reason they were audited.
Thank you, ma'am. And I don't see any more questions on the board. For the proponents, we now have, and I remind everyone, it is 1:20. We're supposed to be on the floor. We have 20 cards in opposition not wishing to speak. We have 8 cards in opposition wishing to speak. And we have 1 card in opposition by Ben Clapper, Louisiana Right to Life, present in opposition, and will provide information if requested. Mr. Alexander, Chris Alexander, Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Board. Is Mr. Alexander present, and is he wishing to speak, or does he waive? I'm assuming Mr. Alexander is waiving. We will place his red card in opposition in the record. Sarah Zagorski, Louisiana Right to Life. Sarah Zagorski. Ms. Zagorski left. We will place her red card in opposition in the record. Dr. Sally Ball. Dr. Sally Ball, if you're going to give testimony, Ms. Ball, Dr. Ball, if you would come to the table. Dustin Bertrand, Louisiana Right to Life, in opposition, and Mark Campo. Let me see that one. Dr. Ball, you're up first.
My name is Dr. Sally Ball. I'm an internal medicine physician practicing in Shreveport for 18 years and 7 years in New Orleans, for a total of 25 years. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Chairwoman Villio and Representative Boyd, for the privilege to shed some light in the way of an alternative perspective on House Bill 164. Your desire to hear all of your constituents' viewpoints, both presently living and those to be born, is what makes our great state of Louisiana great. It is oftentimes the dissenting view that makes our solutions become more apparent. My husband and I recently traveled to Bukavu, Democratic Republic of the Congo, to partner with an organization, My Child and Me, founded by Josette Zahinda. This group rescues, teaches, equips abused women and their children that have been abandoned by their husbands, oftentimes for being raped and sexually abused. While we were there, our organization, Lazarus Momentum, was able to employ a female physician whose primary objective will be to provide medical and psychological support to these women and children, as well as former program participants. We've heard a lot of gut-wrenching testimony, a lot. But allow me a different vantage point. Rather than throwing out the baby with the bathwater, let us help these women and children. I'm an individual that was conceived as a result of an egregious incident between my birth mother and her uncle. Sexual violence causes incredible trauma. You've heard that today. And it can last a lifetime. Let's join together to address those issues: depression, anxiety, insomnia, post-traumatic stress disorder that ensue after such an event. Let's do this with legislation that provides for psychological counseling and medical care for these suffering women and children. Don't kill the innocent baby. Help the suffering mother.
Thank you, Dr. Ball. Representative Knox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Ball, thank you so much for being here. I just totally appreciate your perspective that you're bringing to this conversation. As I have said repeatedly, I have the most respect from my colleagues with their position on this issue. I know them to be good and decent people. I have repeated this from day one of me being here. And I believe that with everything in me, but we couldn't be farther apart on this issue. Couldn't be farther apart. I love them to death and respect them to death. But we are total opposite ends. I appreciate your suggestion that we should all come together, and I totally agree, and I extend my hand for that. I'm with you on that. My issue is, however, when we talk about these children, we are engaged in a battle currently to feed hungry kids in Louisiana. We turned away $71 million to feed the child that's here. In our state of Louisiana, we got kids who are abused in these homes every day. Why? Because the parent who has been sexually abused was a young teenage mother who didn't have the maturity to look after them, who didn't have the mental capacity to take care of them. And every time they see that child, it reminds them of their trauma, and they're hands off in parenting. And that's that same child we see in the streets. It's that same juvenile that's carjacking. It's that same juvenile that's armed robbing. It's that same juvenile we want to put in prison and treat as an adult. And it's a vicious cycle. And I get sick and tired of it, personally. And I want to have a real conversation about it. I want to have a real conversation about it. I want to have the ugly conversation about it, because this is real people and real life that we're talking about. And when we look at juvenile crime, we don't even fathom for 1 second that that may be a reason that they are unwanted. They are the product of a rape, of a mother who can't bring herself to show some affection to that child, but we're going to force her to do it. And then when we want to take care of the child as a society, we fail at that. We fail at it in Louisiana. So let's have that conversation. I welcome it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You've had it with every witness, Representative Knox, but thank you. Dr. Ball, I don't see any more questions for you. Christy Lynch, if you want to, red card in opposition, Christy Lynch. If you want to trade places, Dr. Ball, with Ms. Lynch and Dustin Bertrand.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Dustin Bertrand. I'm from Abbeville, Louisiana. On behalf of myself and Louisiana Right to Life. And I don't know, maybe I can just give a little light into this news perspective, maybe. For the most part, I was born and raised in South Louisiana. I was raised by a single parent the first 5 years of my life. My mom got married and blessed me with an amazing stepfather and a younger brother. But I'll be honest, when I was 19 years old, I was a sophomore at McNeese State University. My life changed. I had a hole in my heart, and I needed to have open heart surgery in New Orleans, Louisiana. And so upon having that surgery, I was over 18, so I had to fill out some paperwork. And they said that I could possibly die. And so for whatever reason, I wanted to know where was the dad before this dad, because I had struggled calling my stepfather father. And so she walked me down a night that she never forgot, and a conversation that I'll never forget. So in August 2009, in Abbeville, Louisiana, on the south of the airport, on a green picnic table, behind our pool house, over some gravel rocks, next to a gray Lincoln owned by my grandmother, a conversation between me and my mom changed the course of what I thought a man should be and should become. And she's like, you know, Dustin, I'm sorry, I really don't know who your biological father is, because she walked me through a Louisiana Saturday night when she was having a little bon temps, where she was date raped. And she woke up the next morning in an apartment building, in a hotel building, not knowing how she got there, not exactly what happened to her, but having that woman's intuition. But guys, I just come here to tell you today, luckily for me, my mom did not just say yes to life. She said yes to being my mother for the last 34 years. I don't think I'm a son of a rapist. I'm a son of a Southern woman who said yes in the face of a tragedy and egregious injustice to her. She has been able to unconditionally love me, get me through school, and we now take care of my dying grandmother as co-caregivers. I also would like you to think about this. When women or children are in these crisis situations, right, I'm sure they're full of fear. But in my case, my mother's greatest fear has become her greatest advocate. Obviously, the rapist left my mom. My mom's father left her. And my mom's former husband left her. But you know what? 34 years later, her son, who was once her greatest fear, has become her greatest advocate and doesn't plan on leaving her anytime soon. So I'm not here saying that we know what the future holds or whatnot. But who's to say whenever this young woman gets a certain age, she doesn't realize or believe that she did murder someone in her belly those years ago by having an abortion. We don't know. I can't justify that or guarantee that. I'm just here to shed light with y'all guys that my life has value but behind the way in which I was conceived. I've counseled some of your sons that don't have fathers. I've counseled some of your daughters who felt unheard and unseen. I'm a full-time leadership and like you say, accompaniment for our youth around the state of Louisiana, from as far south as Galliano and as far north as Spring Hill. So I'll just say, keep that in mind when you make these decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Bertrand, for your testimony. I do not see any members' questions on the board, but thank you for being here again. Rep. Knox.
Consistent, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Thank you, sir, for being here and bringing your perspective. I totally appreciate it. Because we need to hear that perspective as members and legislators. We need to know that side of this conversation that we're having. So thank you for being here. Thank you for coming last year and sharing the same testimony. Yeah,
You got a good memory.
I don't forget faces. That's part of PTSD. You remember certain things.
Amen.
But in all sincerity, I want you to share with your mom that I'm so grateful that she made the decision and choice that she made, because you seem to be a fine young man who has it together. And I'm so appreciative of you being here today, sharing her story and giving a whole nother perspective to this conversation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bertrand.
Can I just say one thing?
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you for your service, and my stepfather is a Marine, so hurrah.
Thank you, Mr. Bertrand. Deborah Melvin, if you want to come. Miss Melvin waves. We will put your red card in opposition in the record. Thank you, Miss Melvin. And Cynthia, is it Collins from Speak Hope? I do not see Cynthia Collins, or do I? All right, Miss Collins, if you want to come take to the table. And Christy Lynch and Mark Campo, I don't remember which one I called first, so y'all decide who's testifying first.
Yeah, good afternoon again. Mark Campo with the Definition of Life Bill Legislative Initiative. My comments will be very brief. I just want to echo what was already said here at the table. A child that has been raped and is additionally forced to have an abortion is essentially raped twice. To go through such a traumatic procedure in an attempt to rectify or dispense of the rape as if it were that simple, as if somehow, it would counteract the trauma and heal the rape victim. But instead, what it would do is it would further add trauma upon trauma. And oh, by the way, kill an innocent child that otherwise just might bring something positive out of this thing that was so tragic. The death penalty should be given to the child rapist, not the innocent child. And I don't know how much more I could say other than that. But, you know, there's in Proverbs chapter 31, verse 8, it says,
There's not a requirement to use the 3 minutes, but go ahead with your Proverbs.
okay, it says, open your mouth for the speechless in the cause for all who are appointed to die. And when it comes to abortion, in other words, it doesn't say all except the rapist, you know, that they raped this child, the raped child, rather, I should say. It says all who are appointed to die. So, I mean, I'll just say that the scriptures, in my view, is above anything that we can do here. And I would encourage you to consider the Word of God. And again, somebody mentioned Psalm 139, verse 13. Children in the womb are fearfully and wonderfully created, and they're created in the image of God. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Campo. Representative Knox.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Mr. Campo. Thank you again for being here, and I totally appreciate your perspective, and I appreciate conversations I've had. You used the word forced. Are you referring to the bill that we're talking about? Because I'm not aware anywhere in the bill is there a forced abortion. My recollection and appreciation as I look at the bill, it is an option. It is an option between that child and that child's parent. Nowhere in the bill that I'm looking at says forced.
Well, you know, in that context, I agree with you that when I say force, usually it's an adult that's going to force a minor child, 9, 10, or 12-year-old child, to have the abortion. And I guess that's a whole other question. Is who's the decider in that regard? Going back to the previous bills talked about the physician's ability to make decisions. Again, that conversation has to take place prior to maybe that woman doesn't want to have an abortion.
Yes, sir.
Because there's an anomaly in the pregnancy.
Yes, sir.
So-
But to respond to your point, I don't think a 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old child who's been raped and molested and has incest can even make a legal decision in anything, not alone an abortion. So I would imagine if a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old or 11-year-old is raped, it makes sense for the parent to make that decision. Because a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old or 11-year-old don't have that capacity, as I understand.
Right.
Would you agree?
Certainly they don't have the emotional capacity, and I think that an abortion would just add to that emotional trauma.
Okay.
So the child would be raped twice, in my view.
Noted. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Campo, I don't see any further questions for you. Ms. Lynch.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee. I wish this bill could separate incest from rape, because in my idea of understanding things, you would be able to determine if incest has taken place through DNA testing. Correct? Right? That is simply provable. When it comes to the rape exception, that's a lot more difficult to prove, because if you prove it criminally, the child will be born by the time that process has wound itself through the courts. So as I read the bill, there is an opportunity for someone to say that this has taken place. And I know a lot of 15, 16, 17-year-olds who are sexually active that are having consensual sex, some of which did conceive and are happy that they had their child, some of which had an abortion and they live with that regret. They know that they have given up the opportunity to be with an eternal being that they will see again in heaven, and they live with that regret. I would like to see if it would be considered that when you have a person that has perpetrated a rape, that person would be brought to justice, just like you talk about, Representative Knox. And I'm from New Orleans, too. And so there's no provision in this bill, as I read it, that person is brought to justice. So do we allow this person who has actually perpetrated a rape, right, to be let loose again in society and have him perpetrate this crime again? Is there no way to bring this person to justice and have justice for the woman who was raped and the family who has to deal with this? Is there not a provision? Is there not an opportunity within this bill for that to be considered, as well as adoption? I know of people, not personally, but I know of people who have been adopted who did find it to be a good solution. There was not the constant reminder. That was not the constant trauma. But at the same time, you felt as though you gave a child a chance to live and to live a good life. And I appreciate, Delisha Boyd is my own representative, and we've talked about this personally, and I really appreciate her having the bravery to bring this forth. But I am glad that Delisha Boyd is on this planet. I am glad that she is here. And so I'm asking questions. I'm not stating what should be done, and thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Representative Knox.
Madam Chair, thank you for being here, and you're bringing another perspective to the conversation as well. And I want you to know that I extremely am thankful and grateful for it and appreciative for it. You can address your question to the author, Representative Boyd, but as it relates to bringing the rapist, we're on the same page with that. In fact, I probably align more with my colleague, Representative Horton. And so there's no disagreement with me on that, ma'am. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I see no more. Thank you, Ms. Lynch. I don't see any members having questions. Ms. Collins.
I'll try and be brief.
Thank you.
My name is Cynthia Collins. I work with Speak Hope. It's based in Slidell. And I've been up in the legislature many times throughout the years concerning my story about abortion in my life and the trauma that it's caused. And so I've taken that pain and turned it into helping other women. Specifically with Speak Hope, we do help women who have conceived during rape. And we have cared for young women as young as 12 years of age. Most recently, this past year, it was a young woman that came across the border of Mexico, and she was raped. And her mom came in, and we had to interpret. And Mom said, "No abortion, no abortion. This is a baby. We want to help her." And so that's one of the things that we do is we don't accept government funds. We're a nonprofit, and we're supported by the community, and we gather together and we help as long as that family needs, including as long as that young woman needs, and including if the help that she needs from the emotional trauma, PTSD, moral injury from the rape itself, and caring for the parents, to providing all of the care free of charge so that both she and the baby will live. And it's amazing some of the stories that we have of women that one said that it's not my baby's fault that I was raped. I couldn't take her life because I was raped. I've been able to heal. Every time I look into her face, I see her smile, especially on Mother's Day. I know I did the right thing. Another one said I could not have an abortion. All I could think of was I wasn't doing what I wasn't doing to make my baby a second victim of the rapist. He's the one who needs to be punished. And Serena, who's a friend, was raped at 13 and never had abortion before. She wasn't told about the abortion, what it would do, sent to the clinic. The rapist would repeat raping other girls and women, and the clinic I was taken to would be shut down after not reporting other 13-year-olds being raped. Because one of the things that happened was when the baby was born, they were able to take the DNA from the rapist and then convict the rapist because of what had happened, rather than the evidence or the baby being flushed down the toilet. So I really want to encourage, I just believe Louisiana is a beautiful place where we can care for both mother and child, no matter how that child is conceived. And I have really laid down my life in the over 40 years that I've lived in Louisiana to do that, because I love this state, and I love, no matter what has happened to a person, how they've been conceived, or what is the trauma that's been happened to them. We want to care for them both. And really, that's what I want our state to be known for, not a throwaway state.
Thank you, ma'am. Representative Knox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Collins, thank you so much for being here and for the work that you do. I thank God for you and all that you do. We need more people like you. As I understand, and my appreciation about Representative Boyd's bill is all about choice. And the choice, if a parent has a 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old child who has been brutally raped and incest, that's a choice for that family and their God to make. I hope you would appreciate that. And let me say this. I think Louisiana is the greatest state in these United States. It's the most unique state. I think this country is exceptional out of any other country in the world. As a United States Marine, I served, and I left a piece of myself over in the Middle East for this country, and I do it all over again. But as it relates to this bill that we're talking about today, these innocent girls, these children who are abused, who are raped in the most vile kind of way, I stand on that wall. I stand on that wall to protect them. I stand and do everything I can to give them voice and elevate their voice. If it means me begging, if it means me being vulnerable, I would do it, and I would do it in a heartbeat. And I say that with all due respect to my colleagues who are on the other end of this issue. They're good and decent people, and I believe them when they say what they say as it relates to pro-life. I take no question about that. I make no exception about that. They believe what they believe. But on this issue, when it relates to these children who have been raped and incest in the most vile, graphic kind of way, I'm with them each and every time. Each and every time. So my passion that I have around this issue, it is personal. I want you and I want everyone to understand and appreciate. For me, it is personal.
And sir, I do understand that, and I understand your passion, your PSD, and what might be called moral injury from choices that are made also. And I love you, and I'm praying for you since I heard you last week. But I'm standing on the wall for not only that baby in the womb, I'm standing on the wall for that young woman, because I know the trauma of abortion. It's over 40 years, and it hasn't left me. Jesus has healed me, but it hasn't left me. It's the loss and the trauma of taking your own child's life. And so that's what I want to see, both thrive, both inside and outside the womb. And I appreciate you, Representative Knox.
Thank you.
Representative Walters.
Thank you for being here. How many women and girls does your organization serve like every year?
Well, since we opened in 1986, we've served over 35,000 women. And we serve in St. Tammany Parish, Orleans, St. Bernard Parish, the Gulf Coast, and actually even some that are now coming across the border, sadly. We don't turn anybody away, Representative Walters. So.
In the families and women that are coming across the border, you don't report them like to the law or anything, right?
No. Well, no, we don't, because they are coming in. There are some times that we do have to get the law involved because women are being trafficked across the border also. So we have had to get the law involved. But we're always looking out for the most vulnerable and wanting to provide care.
Okay. And do you have any kids like that maybe you adopt, like young women that you adopt throughout the year?
Well,
or any foster children?
Now, I can tell you, I spiritually adopt a lot. When a National Day prayer on Thursday ran across the field, Miss Cindy, and because our care and compassion, I just want to tell you, as a Louisianan, it goes beyond, government. So, I've been doing it a long time. Some that are in their 20s. There's one that's actually being promoted to major. He's a chaplain in the U.S. Air Force. So he served overseas, and he was conceived in rape. His story is pretty much the same as Dustin's. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
I can
you.
tell you some stories.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Collins. Members, we have a motion by Representative Walters to report as amended. Representative Boyd, do you want to close on your bill before we take a vote?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I just want to cover a few things really quickly because I know we're late to the floor. Just on some of the testimony that we've heard from several of the witnesses that came up to talk against this particular bill, for us to, one, remember that we're talking about the mind and understanding of a child, not an adult woman. Dustin's story moved me. In 1990, his mother had a choice, and he said it occurred in date rape. So she does know who his father is and has chosen not to tell who it is, but that's her right. It's her choice. I listened to the person who was just up here talk about what her organization has done. I would like to know personally, what has she done? Has she adopted any of those kids? Does she have any of them in foster care? We cannot only be concerned with the child in a womb. If we are talking about the totality of the child, it's from the womb to the tomb. We got to take care of that child all the way through. What a body goes through, and the women here do know, maybe not the men, but if you can think back to when your wives were pregnant, just the initial transforming of the body, the hip spreading, the diabetes that might come along with it, the swelling that might come along with it, the gestational high blood pressure that might come along with it. That is a trauma in itself. And we cannot forget that this bill now is focused on children, not young women who go through date rape, not an adult who may be able to make that decision on their own to keep the child and provide for that child, and also, in addition to that, get help for themselves. One person said it's like the second rape. What do you think the trauma to the body in carrying a rapist baby for a 10 or 11 or 12 or even a 16-year-old? That trauma will far surpass this. Many of these kids wouldn't even survive a birth. We have one of the highest rates of women dying in pregnancy in this state. We have one of the highest rates of infant mortality in this state. I'd like us to address those things too. So from here, I'll ask for your favorable passage. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Boyd. We have a motion by Rep. Walters to report as amended. Do we have an objection? We have an objection by Representative Horton. Ms. Wyman, if you'd please call the roll.
Representative Adams?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Bacala? Representative Boyer?
No.
No. Representative Cox? No. Representative Fontenot?
No.
No. Representative Horton? No. Representative Knox?
Yes.
Yes. Representative LaFleur? Yes. Representative Moore? Representative Ventrella? No. Representative Walters? Yes. Representative Wiley? No. Representative Villio?
No.
No. 4 yeas, 7 nays.
Do we have a motion? Motion by Representative Horton to adjourn.